I feel like I belong and I don't, all at the same time. And recently I've started to realise that this is probably why I see things the way I do. For most of my teens and my 20s, I was kind of just moving. Not always in a physical sense, but often my mental mindset. It was either different places, different people, different things, different phases. And once I left one of those and moved on, I never really looked back. I've always been kind of bad at holding on to and retaining friendships. And at the time when I was younger, this kind of felt like freedom. That I was trying to understand myself and the world around me. It wasn't until I got older that I started to realise that this approach may have cost me something. I first left the UK in the late 90s when I was between high school and college. I did what I feel most of my friends were doing, which was taking a brief time away from life to travel. And originally, my trip away from home was supposed to be 3 to 6 months. But I stayed away for almost 3 years. And during that time, I met the person that would become my wife, and ultimately be the reason why, after returning to the UK for a short period and finish college, I would move to the US permanently. I've built my life here. My family, my friends, and my routines are all here in the US. And this place feels like home. I became a citizen 13 years ago. And I'm at a point now where I've lived in this country more than the one that I was born and raised in. 20 years ago, I didn't really think much about this decision. It was just what I was supposed to do. I had my entire life ahead of me, and it just felt like part of moving forward. But over the past few years, something has definitely shifted. Maybe it's just the fact that I'm getting older, and I'm spending more time thinking about where I fit in life. I think this is especially prominent now, when conversations around identity and immigration are more charged than they ever used to be. I think the truth is, I fit in somewhere in between. I'm an American citizen, and deeply proud of this country and the fact that it has adopted me. But I know that the moment I open my mouth, it's obvious I'm not originally from here. There's always the question, where are you from? And while the vast majority of those people who ask that question are not coming from a negative space, I can tell you that I've personally experienced varying amounts and degrees of discrimination in the past couple of years based purely on my accent, and that I'm not originally from this country. And then, when I go back to England, a place that I should be able to call home, things there feel different also. The familiar has become completely unfamiliar. I feel like a visitor in a place that wants to find me, and that's a strange and uneasy feeling. And for a while, it added to those questions I had about my identity. But on a recent trip back to the UK, I realised that this is actually a positive thing, especially for my photography, because I'm able to see familiar places that I thought I knew so well and things that I would have just dismissed in a completely different light and with a fresh set of eyes. And this has enabled me to approach my photography there a lot differently and notice things that I probably would have just ignored if I'd spent a lot more time there. One of the disciplines I've tried to adopt when I'm out traveling and photographing is not to spend too much time looking at the images I've created while I'm on that trip. One, it distracts from the photography that I might make in the future, and it also could hinder the direction I'm going in by making me think that I haven't documented or taken images in a way that I'd like at a certain time. I tend to back up all the work I've created at the end of the day, upload it to Lightroom so I've also got it backed up on the cloud, but that's as far as I go. I don't start to review or edit images until I get back from a trip. I think maybe this is something I've adopted from several years of also shooting completely on film, and so I don't have the ability there to review images straight away, and this is carried over into my digital work. When I started going through the images that I've created for this trip, I certainly started to notice something different. The way I documented our trip there was a lot different than I think I'd shot in the UK in the past. I'd certainly highlighted things that I probably wouldn't have noticed on prior trips. I probably would have just dismissed them as normal or boring, and just part of the average landscape or dynamic of being in the UK. What I noticed this time is that I'd spent a lot more time focused on some of those details than I normally would. And what that has done is added to the depth of the body of work that I created there on this trip. And I think it helped create a more well-defined and well-rounded story from the time that we'd spent there. It's also done a lot to reaffirm that it's actually okay to be in between. I can have a shared love for the country that's adopted me and the one that I grew up in. I can be proud of my heritage and joyous about the fact that I've built a new and successful life in the States. It doesn't have to be 100% one or the other. And again, I think as you get older you start to think about these things more. This last trip certainly added some clarity to how I personally feel about myself and my identity.